The atmosphere inside the downed recon craft was thick with smoke, sparks spitting from exposed conduits like dying stars. Blood smeared the cracked cockpit glass, most of it his. Sergeant Kael Rourke didn't flinch. He blinked once. Then twice. Still breathing. Damn shame, he muttered. Outside, the ash-swept plains of Arca 7 stretched for miles, a dead world now reduced to a war graveyard. The battle had ended hours ago. If you could call it a battle. It was more like slaughter. The Jatil, war-born reptilian giants, had descended on the human forward outpost with seismic precision. No warning. No mercy. Just blood and bone and shattered steel. The vanguard had fallen. His squad had fallen. Everyone but him. The only thing still functioning was his pulse, and even that was optional now. Kael pushed the cockpit open with a groan, metal screeching like a wounded beast. He stumbled out, limping through the shallow dust, one hand gripping his cracked rifle, the other pressing against his ribs. Overhead, 3 Jatil dropships hovered like vultures over a carcass. Their searchlights sliced through the smoke. He should have hidden. He didn't. Instead, he stood tall, broken armor reflecting their cold glow. He spat blood on the ground and raised both arms. "Come on," he said quietly. "Let's get this over with." 30 minutes earlier. The transmission came through just before impact. Kael remembered the voice, fuzzy, panicked. "Do not engage. I repeat, do not engage. The enemy is adapting." That's when the sky turned white. He had been flying recon with 2 rookies. Green kids. He never learned their names. Never had time. 1 second, laughter in the comms. Next, a beam of ultraviolet plasma had ripped the clouds apart and turned the rear bay into a fireball. He survived by sheer positioning and stupid luck. The craft spiraled out of orbit, crashing like a comet. When he crawled out, everything was gone: command, comms, backup, hope. So he started walking. Present. The Jatil landing team touched down ahead of him in a fan-shaped formation. 10 warriors, each one 8 feet tall, clad in organic armor that pulsed with living light. One of them stepped forward. Larger. Woundless. A commander. Kael smiled. "You took my brothers," he said. "Let's see if you can take what's left." The commander tilted its head. It didn't speak. Not verbally. Instead, a pulse vibrated through Kael's skull, a psychic frequency, like a drumbeat of war. "Human. You are alone. Lucky you." The alien raised its glaive. The others spread out, encircling him like wolves. Kael didn't move. He didn't run. He dropped his rifle. Pulled a cylindrical device from his belt, black, humming, wired with blinking red lights. A dead man's trigger. One squeeze, and the high-yield antimatter core would vaporize everything within a mile. "Yeah," Kael whispered. "I'm alone. And that means I get to choose how this ends." The alien commander hesitated. Its posture shifted. Calculation replaced arrogance. For the first time, Kael saw it: fear. 2 months earlier, Kael had been pulled from active combat rotation after Operation Cold Halo. Too many injuries. Too many ghosts. He wasn't discharged. He refused discharge. Instead, he volunteered for recon. Solo missions? Quiet death. The doctor said he had unresolved trauma. He laughed at that. "I've got perfectly resolved trauma. I just don't mind joining it." No family left. No unit either. Just a dog tag and a silent ache in his chest that never healed. He stopped trying. Death wasn't a fear anymore. It was a destination. Back to now. One of the Jatil moved forward, slow, careful, like it was approaching an unstable bomb. It was. Kael kept his eyes locked on the commander. "You wanted to break us," he said. "But you don't get it, do you? We're not like you." He stepped forward. "You break a human, and we don't die." Another step. "We decide to." He pressed the trigger slightly. The device emitted a high-pitched whine. The circle of Jatil warriors stepped back, weapons raised but uncertain. Their hive instincts couldn't compute this variable, a species that embraced death as a weapon. The commander snarled something guttural. The other warriors held formation, but their footwork shifted. Uneasy. This wasn't how humans fought. Not by the book. Not with a grin and a bomb in hand. Kael looked up at the crimson sky, his vision blurring. Blood loss, probably. Or peace. But then movement. From the ridge behind the Jato dropship, a ripple of shadows broke into motion. Figures. Human figures. Camouflage adaptive suits. Stealth tech. His hand clenched the device tighter. But then a voice rang out in his earpiece, clear, calm. Rourke, stand down. You've got backup. Repeat, stand down. He blinked. His lips twitched. Son of a bitch. Took you long enough. Explosions erupted across the ridge. Plasma fire rained down. The Jato formation scattered. Kael dropped to his knees, weapon forgotten, the dead man's switch rolling from his palm. 2 medics rushed him. One pulled off her helmet. A woman with a scar over her left eyebrow. Rourke? You really were gonna blow yourself up? He chuckled weakly. Wasn't a bluff. Yeah, we figured that. She injected him with a stimpack. Pain flared through his side, and then blissful numbness. Command says you bought us enough time to launch the counterstrike, she said. Rourke coughed. Don't give me a medal. Just name a bomb after me. She laughed. We already did. Rourke-class detonator. Has a nice ring to it. As his eyes began to close, Kael felt it. Not peace, not yet, but purpose. He hadn't died. But he had mattered. And in a galaxy that had forgotten what humans could do when they had nothing left to lose, that was more terrifying than any alien fleet. The medbay lights were too clean, too bright. Kael Rourke hated clean. Clean meant hospitals. Clean meant survival. He wasn't sure he wanted that anymore. He lay strapped to a biobed aboard the Dauntless, a dreadnought-class warship orbiting the ruins of Arca 7. His ribs were wrapped in synth skin, his arm regrown from a cloned graft, and his heart, still beating, against his will. Lieutenant Juno Vey stood beside him, arms folded, her expression unreadable. The same scar over her left brow. She hadn't left his side since extraction. You know, Kael rasped. This isn't the afterlife I was aiming for. You're not in the clear yet, she replied. We need your brain before we toss your ashes into space. Comforting. 12 hours later, Kael was limping through the Dauntless war room, eyes on the shifting holographic display. Red clusters, enemy movement. Blue blips, human resistance. Yellow zones, contested. General Elric Voss paced in front of the display, all tight jaw and controlled rage. The Jato Command AI changed tactics 2 weeks ago. They're not just wiping out fleets, they're turning our own systems against us. A silent tension fell. Juno spoke first. You're saying sabotage? More than that, Voss replied. Infiltration. Command-level interference. We think the Jato have hacked into us. Kael's voice was hoarse but steady. Someone on the inside. Voss nodded. We've got a traitor. Kael looked around. The war room was full of trusted names, veterans, people who'd bled for Earth's remnants. The idea that one of them was feeding coordinates to the enemy made Kael's stomach churn harder than any wound. Why me? He asked. Why bring me into this? Juno answered. Because you walked into the heart of a Jato forward division and lived. You've seen what their minds feel like. You survived them. That makes you useful? Kael's lips twisted. So I'm bait. Voss didn't deny it. That night, Kael sat alone in his quarters, staring at the file Juno left on his terminal. Names, logs, access records. One flagged red, Commander Rytha Lennox. Decorated pilot. Former ally. One-time drinking partner. He read the line again. Unauthorized data transmission. Logged 0437 hours, coordinates matched to outpost massacre. Kael rubbed his temples. No. Not Lennox. He was one of the good ones. He trusted him once, during a recon on Titan's black storms. Lennox had saved his life with nothing but a busted drone and a flare gun. That kind of thing meant something. Didn't it? The door chimed. Juno entered without waiting. You saw it? Kael nodded. How sure are we? 75%. But it's climbing. He leaned back. What if it's a framed job? Shuttle Tech can replicate command codes. It can. But only if they've had deep access. And that narrows the list. She sat across from him, elbows on her knees. You still think about dying? She asked suddenly. Kael raised an eyebrow. You had a death switch in your hand less than 48 hours ago. She continued. Don't pretend it was strategy. He sighed. It wasn't about dying. It was about doing something that mattered. He paused. I'm just tired of watching good people die while I keep breathing. Her voice softened. Then maybe this time you stop the dying. Kael met Lennox the next morning in the armory. The man smiled like nothing had changed. You look like hell, Lennox said, slapping him on the shoulder. Glad to see you're not vapor. Kael forced a chuckle. Barely. They suited up in silence. Both assigned to a covert recon sweep of an abandoned comms relay, standard protocol, low risk. A chance to talk. Or kill. Depending. Inside the shuttle, Kael studied Lennox's face and profile. Calm. Focused. No guilt. No twitch. Either innocent, or practiced. You ever question what we're doing out here? Kael asked, casually. Lennox shrugged. What's the question? Survive. Fight. Repeat. But what if the fight's already lost? What if surviving means compromising everything? Lennox turned to him. You thinking about switching sides? Wouldn't be the first, Kael replied softly. The silence grew thick. Lennox didn't blink. Say what you came to say, Rourke. Kael reached for his rifle slowly. Not drawing, just checking. Were you at Outpost 19? The night we lost Vance, Cora, Min? Lennox didn't answer. Kael's voice dropped. You sent those coordinates. Lennox leaned back, his expression flat. Then he smiled. I always wondered how long it'd take. Kael's heart stopped for half a second. You are the leak. No, Lennox said calmly. I'm the cure. He tapped his wrist console. The shuttle lights blinked red. Manual override. Kael lunged. They fought in zero-G, floating inside the small hold. Lennox was faster. Stronger. But Kael had desperation. And rage. A knee to the ribs. An elbow to the throat. A shock blade sliced across Kael's side, but he didn't let go. He slammed Lennox into the wall, forcing the air out of his lungs. Why? He roared. Lennox gasped, blood bubbling at his lips. Because humanity doesn't deserve to win, not like this. Not when we've become them. Kael hesitated. That one moment cost him. Lennox headbutted him, reached for the blade. But Kael had already pulled the trigger. A stun shot fired point-blank into Lennox's chest. He convulsed, dropped, unconscious. Kael slumped back, panting. The shuttle drifted. Command, he gasped into his comm. Traitor confirmed. Send extraction. Later, Juno stared at Lennox through the reinforced cell wall, her jaw tight. He's cracked. Indoctrinated. Kael nodded, blood soaking through his side dressing. Not cracked. Convinced. She turned to him. You okay? He didn't answer at first. Just stared at the sleeping traitor on the other side. I don't think this war ends with one side winning, Kael finally said. I think it ends when we forget why we started fighting. She placed a hand on his shoulder. Then we don't forget. Kael gave a thin smile. Yeah. Easier said than done. But somewhere deep inside, a part of him, small and stubborn, began to burn again. The Jato homeworld wasn't on any human star map. Its name couldn't be translated, just a pulse of sound that resembled a thunderclap buried beneath ocean waves. But now, that world was within range. Humanity had found it. And they were going to end this. The Dauntless orbited in stealth mode just outside the system's nebula curtain. Aboard, final mission briefings played out in grim silence. No cheers. No good luck chants. Everyone knew this wasn't a mission, it was a funeral waiting to be written. Kael Rourke stood in the shadows of the armory, buckling his armor with steady hands. His wounds were barely healed, but his resolve had never been clearer. This was the final act. Juno stepped in, helmet tucked under her arm. "You shouldn't be here," she said. He didn't look at her. "I'm already dead. Might as well do something with it." She hesitated. "You're not dead, Kael. You just stopped caring if you lived." He locked eyes with her. "That's the difference between us and them, Juno. They fight to survive. We fight because someone has to." She didn't argue. Just handed him a modified pulse detonator. New design. Tripwire core. Trigger delay 3 seconds. "It's not meant to be recovered." Kael smirked. "Perfect." The plan was desperate. Slip past orbital defenses. Infiltrate the central synapse core, a biomechanical tower pulsing with the Jatil's collective consciousness. Destroy it. Sever the hive's connection. End the war in one surgical blow. But nobody really expected to make it back. Kael and his team, 3 soldiers and Juno, dropped in through the burning upper atmosphere in a stealth pod. Shields shimmered, hull groaned. No margin for error. "Drop zone in 15. The pilot muttered. Juno glanced over. "Still time to back out." Kael shook his head. "We passed back out 2 planets ago." The moment the pod slammed into the surface, chaos erupted. The ground was alive, literally. Tendrils of luminous biomass writhed from the soil, reacting to foreign heat signatures. The sky above burned crimson, as if the planet itself bled anger. The soldiers pushed forward in formation. Every step felt watched. Every breath borrowed. Suddenly, movement, left flank. A Jato vanguard emerged, clicking armor, blades unfolded. Kael didn't hesitate. He sprinted toward the threat, drawing fire, forcing their formation to break. Plasma burst past his shoulder. He dropped, rolled, fired point blank. The creature's chest exploded in blue gore. Behind him, Juno barked orders, covering his 6. "Fall back to the ridge!" He ignored her. Eyes locked ahead, on the tower. The synapse core loomed like a cathedral built by monsters, rising black stone fused with writhing organic matter. Its surface pulsed like a heartbeat. Inside it, the Jatil's intelligence echoed, pure, singular, inhuman. Kael ran straight into it. Inside, the air changed. Warm. Damp. Breathing. The walls were flesh and metal, veins glowing, whispering. Not words. Not thoughts. Just pressure. And then he heard it. Human. The voice wasn't spoken. It resonated from inside his skull. "Why do you persist?" Kael didn't slow. "Because you exist. You could join. Peace through submission." He reached the central chamber. A floating column of light. The Jatil Nexus. Alive. Thinking. "You seek to destroy what you do not understand." Kael activated the detonator. Set it on the base. Armed the timer. 3 minutes. "Maybe," he said, turning to face the glow. "But I understand enough to know you fear us. Not because we're strong, but because we break the rules." The air shivered. Rage without sound. "You are chaos. Disease." Kael took a step closer. "We are free will. And no matter how many colonies you burn, you can't code that out of us." The floor beneath him split. A figure emerged from the base of the tower, an alpha Jatil, unlike any he'd seen. Taller. Armored in obsidian plates. Eyes like molten suns. The true warbringer. Kael raised his rifle. Fired. The shot ricocheted off its chest. It moved like lightning, blade to throat. He barely dodged. Slid. Fired again. Too fast. The creature struck. His rifle shattered. He fell back, bleeding from his shoulder, breath stolen from lungs. The thing stood over him. This is the end, human. Kael looked up, smiling despite the blood. It's always been the end. And then Juno's voice crackled through the calm. Timer active. Rourke, what's your status? He didn't answer. He grabbed the detonator, crushed the override, resetting the timer, 15 seconds. Juno screamed in his ear. Kael, what are you doing? He looked at the creature towering over him, then at the pulsing nexus behind it. Making sure it ends. He stood. Wounded, shaking, but upright. The alien lunged. Kael stepped forward and grabbed it, wrapped his arms around the monster, and tackled it straight into the core. They crashed into the light. He closed his eyes. 15 seconds later, orbiting sensors recorded a gravitational spike on the surface. The synapse core detonated in a wave of white heat, vaporizing 2 miles of terrain. No screams. No signal. Just silence. Back on the Dauntless, Juno stood in the command deck, eyes fixed on the blacked-out feed. Confirmed detonation, the tech said quietly. She didn't blink. Confirmed, she whispered. Someone behind her asked. Any survivors? She shook her head. No. But her voice cracked. Far below, where fire had melted stone, where no air remained and no gods watched, one signal blinked weakly from the wreckage. A heartbeat. A single human heartbeat. A full week passed before the first drone reached the blast zone. What it found defied protocol and probability. A single escape pod, half buried, its hull melted, its beacon flickering like a dying star. Inside it, somehow, was Kael Rourke. Unconscious. Burned. But alive. His vitals were barely stable. No gear. No weapon. Just the ragged remnants of his armor, and a handwritten note strapped to his chest. If I wake up, don't tell me we lost. On the Dauntless, medics rushed him into cryostabilization. Juno stood behind the glass, fists clenched. For the first time in her career, she couldn't find words. Voss approached from the shadows, slow and silent. Some men die, he said, so the rest of us can forget how close we came. She turned to him. He didn't die. Yet. They watched as machines hummed and syringes hissed. Kael's body floated in a gel chamber, stitched together by science and stubbornness. The war is over, Voss added. She raised an eyebrow. He nodded. The synapse is gone. Their hives collapsed. No commands. No orders. They tore each other apart in confusion. A pause. Humanity just won. 2 weeks later, Kael woke up. Everything hurt. Even his teeth. A dull light pressed through the medbay ceiling. Clean walls. Monitors. Silence. And then movement. Juno sat by the window, legs propped on the ledge, boots scuffed, eyes red-rimmed but sharp. You took your sweet time, she said. He tried to smile. Failed. Didn't want to come back. She stood, walked to his side. You almost didn't. The pod launched itself after the core detonated. Emergency fallback protocol. You probably didn't even know you were inside it. He blinked slowly. Guess the monster pushed the right button. She stared at him. It was you. You triggered the launch. After the fall. After the blast. Somehow, you chose to live. Kael looked away. I thought I'd done everything I came to do. You had. She stepped back. And still, you came back. Word of Kael Rourke spread like wildfire across the colonies. He didn't want parades. Didn't attend the ceremony. They awarded him the Solar Flame, highest honor, usually posthumous. He refused the medal. Told the courier to melt it into spare parts. Instead, he returned to the fringe. No rank. No command. Just a man with tired eyes and a scarred body walking through the remnants of a war he ended. But he wasn't alone. The settlement on Viral 6 was small. No military presence. No weapons. Just terraforming labs, wind turbines, children chasing dust trails with painted sticks. Kael walked among them like a ghost in daylight. One morning, he stood by a shallow creek, watching filtered water wind around his boots. Juno approached, hands in her jacket. "You sure this is where you belong?" she asked. "No," he said. "But it's where I don't feel like dying." They watched the wind skim across the fields. She spoke without looking at him. "Voss wants you back. Training Corps. Doctrine reform. I'm not a teacher. You are now. Whether you like it or not." He exhaled, a sound half between laughter and grief. "I was a soldier who thought death would solve something. Then I lived, and nothing changed. So I came here. Figured I'd try something harder than war." She looked at him. "Like what?" He met her eyes. "Peace." A year passed. Then another. No Jatil signals. No hive resurgence. The war was over, not because Earth outgunned them, but because a single human detonated the mine that held the monsters together. Still, the universe remained cruel in corners. Pirates. Mutants. Ancient AI relics gone rogue. But the tide had turned. Humanity had proven something ancient and terrifying, that it couldn't be predicted. Couldn't be programmed. When pushed past the edge, it didn't break. It changed. Kael grew quiet over time. Still strong, but slower. His hair grayed early. His bones clicked when he stood too fast. The price of survival. But people came. Veterans. Refugees. Kids who wanted to know what it took to stop a war. He never told them about the pain. Or the nightmares. Or how many times he nearly pressed the trigger before the war ended. He only told them one thing. Courage isn't not fearing death. It's being willing to live after it. On the 10th anniversary of the detonation, a memorial was built on Arca 7, now renamed Rourke's Fall. A black obelisk where the Synapse Corps once stood. Juno visited alone. She placed a hand on the stone. "To the man who taught us that broken things still matter." Then she opened a calm channel. "Hey, Kael," she said softly. Static answered. But in the distance, on a different world, under a yellow sky, Kael stood by a fire, watching the stars shift. He didn't need to answer. He had already spoken in the only way that ever mattered. By surviving.